picture this for a second, okay? You're sitting in these perfectly aligned, pristine, white folding chairs on a beautifully manicured lawn.
Oh, I can totally see it. The classic setup.
Right, exactly. And the string quartet in the corner is playing something, incredibly moving, maybe a classical piece you recognize but just can't quite name.
Like the cello is just vibrating right in your chest.
Yes. And the floral arrangements are cascading down the altar. They're heavy with hydrangeas and roses, looking literally exactly the way they did on the couple's vision board.
Everything is just curated to perfection.
The sun is setting at the perfect angle. The couple is standing up there, holding hands, gazing into each other's eyes. You can actually feel the emotion in the air.
Right, it's that picturesque, flawless, completely cinematic wedding moment.
Exactly. And then, well, it happens.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
Out of absolutely nowhere, a restless toddler, dressed in this tiny, highly restrictive, incredibly uncomfortable tuxedo, decides that the rose petal-covered center aisle is their own personal runway.
Oh man, yeah, we've all been to that wedding.
Right. They make a dead sprint for the altar, screaming at the top of their lungs, just entirely oblivious to the sanctity of the moment. Or, maybe the disruption is a little more subtle than that.
Like what? What's a subtle disruption?
Like maybe it's an elderly relative who has somehow completely missed the shuttle from the hotel, and now half the bridal party in the front row is frantically whispering into their phones.
Oh wow, yeah, covering their mouths while the vows are actually happening.
Exactly. They're trying to figure out where Grandpa is and who has the keys to a rental car.
And just like that, the pristine, carefully curated atmosphere shatters instantly.
Totally shatters.
The magic bubble pops, and suddenly everyone remembers they are sitting in folding chairs on a lawn rather than, floating in a fairy tale.
Yeah, so usually when we think about planning weddings, we fixate on the aesthetics. The food, the dress, the music, the lighting.
Right, the stuff that looks good on Instagram.
Exactly. But underneath all of that beautiful, highly photographed surface-level stuff is a complex, hidden layer of raw, unfiltered human logistics.
And if that underlying logistical layer breaks down, the aesthetic layer collapses right along with it.
It really does. So today we are going on a deep dive into exactly that hidden framework. We're looking at a really detailed guide called Planning for Childcare and Family Logistics on the Big Day.
It's such a crucial topic.
It really is. Specifically, we are going to explore how this guide recommends utilizing a platform called Weddizer. We'll be looking at leveraging its business directory to find specialized vendors and its incredibly niche guidance articles.
Right, to navigate what is arguably the most challenging, unpredictable part of any major event, which is, managing other human beings.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you aren't just managing vendors who have signed a contract to behave a certain way.
No, not at all. You're attempting to manage deeply ingrained family dynamics, right?
Yes.
And varying generational needs.
Yeah, and the sheer raw unpredictability of children, all within a really emotionally charged environment.
What's fascinating here is how the source document fundamentally reframes the entire concept of wedding planning.
How so?
Well, we are so conditioned by magazines and social media algorithms to view wedding planning strictly as an exercise in aesthetic design. Choosing color palettes, tasting cakes, feeling the texture of table linens.
Right, the fun stuff.
Exactly. But this guide approaches the wedding day as a rigorous, high-stakes exercise in project management.
Wow, project management. That sounds a lot less romantic.
It does, but in that context, it positions the Weddizer website not merely as a place to find visual inspiration. It treats it as a central operational hub to execute a highly complex family operation.
I love that framing. So the source material emphasizes right out at the gate that children and extended family introduce variables that can completely derail the timeline and flow of an event.
100%.
It argues that effective planning requires a centralized approach to ensure the kids are engaged and the parents are relaxed. I want to dig into that specific dynamic.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why is the combination of engaged kids and relaxed parents the absolute linchpin for the success of a formal gathering?
Well, we have to look closely at the psychological friction that occurs on a wedding day for anyone who attends with a child. Think about the mindset of a parent walking into a highly formal, expensive event.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
On one hand, they desperately want to celebrate. They want to dress up, enjoy a gourmet meal, catch up with friends or family they haven't seen in years.
Maybe have a few glasses of champagne.
Exactly. They want to be a guest, but simultaneously, their brain is locked in a state of hypervigilance regarding their child's behavior.
Oh, that makes so much sense. They're constantly scanning the room.
Right. They're running threat assessments all night. Like, is the toddler wandering too close to the 5-tier cake?
Or is the 6-year-old getting bored and about to start a massive tantrum during the 20-minute father of the bride speech?
Exactly. They are essentially playing defense the entire night.
So they are physically in the room, wearing a suit or a gown, but mentally they're working a shift.
That is a perfect way to put it. And if the couple hosting the wedding doesn't provide a logistical safety net, like a planned, structured, separate environment for those children, the parents remain entirely on duty.
And when a parent is on duty in a high-stakes environment, their experience as a guest is drastically diminished.
Right? They cannot be present. And the source presents the Weddizer platform as the tool that bridges the gap between the abstract desire of wanting to host a family-friendly event and the harsh reality of actually executing one.
So it removes that psychological friction.
It does. It offers a centralized way to handle those unpredictable variables so the parents can actually, clock out for the evening.
I see the logic there. The idea of removing friction totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But let me play devil's advocate for a minute here.
Go for it.
Because I know there are people out there planning weddings, looking at their budget spreadsheets, who might be listening to this and thinking, wait a second.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Right. Like, I am spending a small fortune on the catering, the venue, the band, the open bar. Is it really my responsibility to manage other people's kids?
That's a fair question.
Like, am I supposed to figure out how Aunt Susan is getting from the Marriott to the reception hall? Shouldn't the guests just act like adults, hire their own babysitters, look up the directions on their phones, and figure their own lives out for one evening?
Yeah.
It feels like we are asking the couple to take on the mental load of 50 different households.
That is the most common counter-argument, and it makes total logical sense from a purely financial and boundaries perspective. I mean, why pay to solve someone else's problem?
Exactly.
But if we examine the source's core argument, it flips that perspective entirely. It argues that yes, it is the couple's event. And because it is their event, any interruption, any stress, any logistical failure ultimately affects their day.
Oh, interesting. So it bounces back on them.
Completely. If a child starts crying hysterically in the middle of the vows because the parents couldn't find a sitter and brought them anyway, that impacts the couple.
Wow. Yeah.
Or if the parents of the bride are stressed and distracted during the cocktail hour because the shuttle bus with the grandparents got lost in transit, the couple is the one feeling the tension in the room.
Because they're the ones standing at the altar watching the empty seats.
Exactly. The guide argues that proactive planning, like using a centralized tool to manage these guests, is not about being overly accommodating or spoiling your family. It is a vital form of self-preservation.
That reframing changes the entire conversation for me.
Right.
You aren't doing this to be the ultimate self-sacrificing host. You are doing it to protect the massive investment you've already made in the day.
Yes. You are building a moat around your own peace of mind.
If you want that cinematic, flawless moment at the altar, you have to engineer the environment so that the things that could ruin it are handled before they even materialize.
You are literally buying an insurance policy for your own emotional state.
That is so true.
And establishing that foundational why, that this is about self-preservation and protecting the core experience of the event, leads directly into the how.
Right, because once you accept that you need to manage these external variables, you have to figure out the actual mechanics of doing so.
Which is where the specific tools recommended in the guide come into play.
Exactly. And according to the guide, solving that problem starts with the most critical asset you can possibly secure for a large-scale event, which is human capital.
Getting the right people in the room to do the actual managing.
Yeah. The text highlights how Weddizer's business section is specifically designed to help couples find verified childcare providers, babysitters, and a very specific category of professionals they refer to as event nannies.
Event nannies, that's such a specific term.
It really is. The advice is to check the platform's reviews, verify their credentials, and book early to secure vendors who have explicit wedding experience. I want to unpack that term, event nanny, because it suggests a level of specialization that goes way beyond just calling the teenager down the street.
Oh, the distinction the guide makes there is vital. We are not talking about a casual Saturday night babysitter here.
What's the main difference?
Well, a standard babysitter is fantastic for a familiar, controlled environment. The kids are in their own home, in their pajamas, watching cartoons in their own living room, right? The routine is totally established.
Yeah, it's low stakes.
An event nanny is a highly specialized professional who knows how to navigate an entirely different, incredibly volatile landscape.
Think about a wedding from a 4-year-old's perspective. It is an environment of intense, relentless sensory overload.
Oh, absolutely.
There are loud, booming noises from the DJ or the band. There are flashing lights. There are hundreds of strangers towering over them.
And the food is unfamiliar and strange.
Their entire daily routine, like nap times, meal times, play times, has been completely thrown out the window.
And on top of all that, they're usually stuffed into formal, itchy, uncomfortable attire that they absolutely hate wearing.
It is essentially a recipe for a total psychological meltdown.
Which is exactly why a professional vent nanny is so important.
Yeah.
They understand child psychology specifically within those high-stress, high-stimulation environments.
So they can see it coming.
Yes. They know how to read the physiological signs of a meltdown before it actually happens and de-escalate it.
Wow.
They possess the specific skill set required to keep a group of, say, 10 to 15 sugar-fueled children quietly and happily entertained in a side room, while a deeply emotional, quiet 20-minute best man speech is happening 50 feet away.
Yeah, that is definitely not a skill the neighborhood teenager typically has.
Not at all.
And the text explicitly uses the phrase verified childcare providers when discussing how to use the Weddizer business directory.
Yes, verified.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the word verified carries an immense amount of weight here. When a couple is handing over the care of their guests' children, or perhaps even their own children, they're dealing with the most precious, high-liability cargo at the entire event.
Without a doubt.
The level of trust required to leave a child with a stranger in an unfamiliar venue is massive. Relying on a general internet search or putting out a blind plea on a local community Facebook board feels incredibly reckless in that context.
It is a massive vulnerability. If we look at how the gig economy has evolved over the last decade, we have become accustomed to finding hyper-specialized services for almost every aspect of our lives.
That's true.
Need someone to build a custom bookshelf? There's an app for that. Need a specialized dog trainer? There's a platform for that. But the event childcare space has historically been very murky.
How did couples used to do it?
They used to have to rely heavily on word of mouth, which is incredibly limiting geographically and stylistically, or they had to take a massive risk on general childcare sites that just aren't tailored to large-scale events.
Right.
The source highlights that using a targeted niche directory like the one on the Weddizer platform is infinitely safer and more efficient.
Because you aren't just hoping the person knows what to do when the catering gets delayed by an hour.
Exactly. You are looking at specific, verified ratings from other couples who hired them for the exact same high-stakes purpose.
It's the difference between asking a random person on the street who happens to own a wrench to fix your plumbing versus hiring a master plumber with 100 five-star reviews, specifically for fixing burst pipes in historic homes.
That's a great analogy. You want the specialist.
And it makes perfect sense that the guide urges couples to book them early. People with that specific, almost magical skill set, the ability to keep a dozen toddlers perfectly content during a string quartet performance, are going to have their calendars booked out a year or more in advance.
They are a rare commodity. And the guide also makes it clear that finding and hiring the right professionals is really only the first step in the equation.
Oh, what's the next step?
Well, you can hire the most experienced, highly rated event nannies on the platform, but if you just drop them in an empty, echoing ballroom or a barren hotel conference room with absolutely nothing to do, they are going to struggle to keep the children contained and happy.
Right, they need tools.
They require a strategically structured environment and a concrete, minute-by-minute plan to execute their jobs effectively.
Which moves us perfectly from the personnel side of the equation into the physical logistics of the day.
The spatial design.
Exactly. The guide refers to this as architecting the child-centric experience, focusing heavily on zones and activities.
This part is so cool.
The source outlines how a couple can actually build a comprehensive kids' activity plan using the resources, articles, and blogs available on Weddizer. The recommendations they list are brilliant in their specificity.
Yeah, they don't just say, give them toys.
No, they suggest setting up a dedicated kids zone that features mini play zones, coloring stations, movie corners, and structured supervised games.
We are getting into the spatial design of a wedding here, which is such an overlooked art form.
Really? How so?
When the source talks about a dedicated kids zone, it is advocating for a deliberate physical separation of space. By creating a separate, dedicated area, you are not just throwing some crayons and a coloring book on a low table in the back corner of the main dining room and hoping the kids stay put.
Right, which never works.
Never. You are effectively running two concurrent, harmonious, but entirely distinct events side by side.
Two events at once.
Yes. You have the adult reception happening in the main space with the toasts, the complex plated dinners, the loud dancing, and the cocktails. Simultaneously, you have the child reception happening in an adjacent space, tailored entirely to their specific developmental needs, physical scale, and attention spans.
It reminds me of setting up a VIP lounge at a major concert or a club.
A VIP lounge. I like that.
Think about it. If you want to keep the VIPs happy, and let's face it, at a family wedding, the kids are the ultimate VIPs. Because if they are unhappy, their parents leave and the party dies.
That is so true. The whole party hinges on them.
Exactly. So you have to give them an exclusive, highly appealing space. The VIP lounge needs incredibly comfortable seating. It needs exclusive snacks that they actually want to consume. And it needs top-tier entertainment.
Because if it's boring.
Right. If the VIP lounge is boring, the VIPs are going to wander back out in the main ballroom and start causing trouble on the dance floor during the couple's first dance. You have to make their dedicated zone the coolest, most engaging place in the entire venue so they actively choose to stay there.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
But looking at this from the perspective of the couple planning the event, if you are a couple in your late 20s or 30s and you don't have kids of your own yet, you likely have zero lived experience with this.
Oh, absolutely zero.
I certainly wouldn't know what a mini play zone should look like, or what specific activities keep a 4-year-old safely entertained for 3 consecutive hours. How does reading articles on a website actually bridge that massive knowledge gap?
That knowledge gap is the exact problem the platform's guidance articles are designed to solve.
Okay.
A couple without children doesn't intrinsically know that an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old require totally different types of engagement, or that putting them in the same unpartitioned space might lead to conflict.
Right. They just think kids are one giant demographic.
Exactly. They don't know the biological reality of a child's energy levels over an exhausting 8-hour event period. The guide points out that Weddizer's niche guidance articles act as an operational blueprint for couples lacking that lived experience.
Do you have an example from the source?
Let's look at the specific mention of movie corners in the source text. That isn't just a random, cute suggestion to throw in a corner. That is a highly tactical, psychologically sound piece of event advice for the later hours of a reception.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why a movie corner specifically rather than just more games?
Consider the timeline. When you hit 8:30 or 9:00 p.m. at a wedding, the adults are usually just finishing dinner and moving to the dance floor. Their energy's peaking.
Oh yeah, that's when the party really starts for the adults.
But children's energy levels at that hour don't just gently taper off, they plummet, they crash hard.
Total meltdown territory.
Yes. If an event nanny tries to initiate a structured, supervised game of musical chairs at 9:00 p.m., it is going to result in tears, arguments, and total meltdowns because the kids are physically exhausted and overstimulated.
That makes total sense.
But a movie corner, setting up a projector, scattering some plush beanbag chairs, handing out blankets, and dimming the lights. That is a genius spatial design choice that aligns perfectly with a child's natural biological rhythm at the end of a long day.
Wow.
It transitions them from active play to a sedentary, soothing activity.
So you are anticipating the biological crash before the crash actually happens, and you are providing a soft, comfortable landing pad for it.
Yes.
Exactly. A couple reads the article, they see the recommendation for the movie corner, they rent the bean bags and the projector, and suddenly they look like childcare savants to all of their guests. All because they followed the blueprint provided by the platform.
It makes them look like absolute pros.
But keeping the VIPs entertained in their lounge is only part of the equation. If we are running 2 concurrent events, we have to talk about sustenance and security.
Entertainment is just the distraction.
Right. The guide dives heavily into menus and venue safety checks next.
Because food and safety are the foundational pillars that keep that secondary event from collapsing into a crisis.
The text is very specific here. It advises couples to work with their caterers, who again can be sourced and vetted through the Weddizer directory, to create dedicated, kid-friendly menus.
Right.
It lists items like midi sandwiches, finger foods, and healthy snacks. And then it pivots aggressively into safety. Securing hazardous areas, ensuring constant supervision, and keeping emergency contacts physically handy.
Let's start with the food.
Yeah, because when I read mini sandwiches and finger foods, my initial thought was that it sounded a bit basic for a formal wedding.
It does sound a little casual.
Right. If a couple is paying a premium catering company thousands of dollars, why wouldn't they want the caterer to provide a proper plated kids meal, like a nice chicken breast, some vegetables, maybe some pasta, served at a proper table? Why does the guide push so hard for finger foods?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand why a plated meal is a terrible idea for a young child at a wedding, we have to look at the intersection of biology and behavioral expectations.
Okay, lay it out for me.
As we mentioned earlier, low blood sugar is the absolute enemy of a peaceful event. It makes adults cranky, but children completely lack the emotional regulation to handle it gracefully. They need to eat frequently.
Yeah, the hangry phase is real.
It's very real. The suggestions in the text mini sandwiches, finger foods, might sound like basic miniaturized versions of adult food, but they are actually highly strategic, logistical choices designed to mitigate specific risks.
What are the risks of a plated meal?
First, plated meals require a child to sit perfectly still at a formal table setting for 30 to 45 minutes while the courses are served. That is an entirely unrealistic expectation for an overstimulated toddler.
That's a great point. I can't even sit still for that long sometimes.
Exactly. Second, plated meals usually require utensils. A knife and a fork are tools that young children might struggle to use effectively, leading to frustration, or they might drop them constantly, or worse, play with them as weapons.
Oh, I didn't even think about the weapon aspect.
And third, plated meals are messy. Serving pasta with marinara sauce to a child wearing a $100 white flower girl dress is a logistical nightmare for the parents and the event nannies.
So, finger foods completely eliminate all of those friction points.
Precisely. Finger foods are inherently mess-free. They don't require utensils. Most importantly, they can be eaten on the go.
Right. A child can just grab a mini sandwich, stand up, eat it while watching a movie, or take a bite and return to the play zone.
By choosing these specific types of foods, as recommended by the guide, the couple is actively removing the friction from the dining experience. You are adapting the food to the child's natural behavior, rather than trying to force the child to adapt to the formal dining behavior of an adult.
Wow, that is so smart. But finding a caterer who actually understands that dynamic is a specific skill.
It really is.
You don't just want a pretentious caterer who turns their nose up at making mini sandwiches. And you don't want a lazy caterer who just throws some frozen chicken nuggets on a paper plate as an afterthought.
Right, you need a balance.
You are looking for a culinary team that possesses the bandwidth and the expertise to execute an incredible gourmet multi-course meal for the adults while simultaneously providing high-quality, appealing, highly tactical snacks for the kids.
That dual capability is rare.
It is. Which really reinforces the value of using a curated business directory, where you can filter for vendors who have a proven track record of executing complex, family-friendly events, rather than just hoping a traditional caterer can figure it out on the fly.
Exactly. Now, the catering choice is about managing internal biology. But the second half of this section, the safety first aspect, is about managing external environmental threats.
Yes, the hazards.
The source places a heavy emphasis on securing hazardous areas, which is a step that I suspect a large percentage of couples completely overlook when they are caught up in the romance and aesthetics of touring a venue.
I mean, when a couple walks into a beautiful botanical garden or a historic mansion, they're looking at the lighting, the architecture, the layout of the dance floor.
Right.
I don't think most people walk into a stunning venue and immediately think, ah, yes, a hazard.
What constitutes a hazardous area in the context of a wedding venue?
Couples don't see the hazards because their eyes are drawn to the beauty and the potential for incredible photographs. But the guide is urging couples to put on a different pair of glasses.
To see the risks.
Right, to view the space through the cold, calculating lens of a risk management professional or an experienced event nanny.
Give me an example. Consider a gorgeous, highly sought-after waterfront venue with a stunning lake view right off the patio. To an adult, that is a romantic backdrop.
Beautiful for photos.
Yes.
Right.
To a wandering toddler who slips away from the reception area for 30 seconds, that lake is an immediate, severe, potentially fatal hazard.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Or think about the lighting.
The uplighting.
Yeah, the beautiful dramatic uplighting placed around the perimeter of the ballroom to give the walls that perfect amber glow. To an adult, it's ambience.
And to a kid.
To a crawling infant, those are incredibly hot bulbs at ground level, surrounded by a maze of tripping hazard power cables that haven't been properly taped down.
That's a brilliant example. And we haven't even mentioned the operational areas of the venue.
Like the kitchens.
Yes, the bustling high-speed catering kitchen with its swinging doors, slippery floors, chefs carrying trays of boiling hot soup and industrial ovens. That is a highly dangerous zone.
Oh, absolutely.
If the kids' area is situated too close to the kitchen doors, a child running out of the room could easily collide with a waiter.
So the guide is instructing couples to actively identify and secure these areas long before the event begins.
Exactly. Whether that means erecting physical barriers, putting up clear signage, ensuring doors are locked, or giving highly specific spatial boundaries to the childcare coordinators they hired.
The text also explicitly mentions keeping emergency contacts physically handy. Let's talk about the terrain, because again, wear comfortable shoes sounds like generic advice. But in a PNW forest, the ground is an active biological variable.
The ground is not dirt. It is a sponge. It is composed of centuries of decaying pine needles, thick layers of moss, and damp, porous soil. It holds moisture constantly.
So if you send out an elegant invitation and you do not explicitly aggressively warn your guests about the physics of the forest floor, someone is going to show up wearing expensive stiletto heels.
And the physics of a stiletto heel on a mossy sponge dictate that they will sink 3 inches into the damp earth with every single step they take.
Wow, that sounds awful.
They will ruin their shoes. They will be physically exhausted from trying to balance. They will likely twist an ankle.
The environment will actively punish them.
Yes. The Weddizer Guide is implicitly teaching planners that you are responsible for mitigating the hostility of the environment. You have to communicate clearly. You have to recommend block heels, boots, or wedges. You are managing their physical safety.
And managing all of this leads directly into the budgeting strategy. The Weddizer resources are adamant that you cannot look at a venue's baseline rental fee and assume that is your budget. You have to calculate the hidden multipliers.
The multipliers are the financial ruin of unprepared planners.
Let's track them. We talked about the vendor travel premiums, especially for Vancouver Island, paying for ferry tickets, commercial transit time, and hotel rooms for your catering staff. But there's also the timing multiplier.
Oh, timing is everything.
The guide warns against booking during peak tourist seasons or heavy rain months without understanding the financial impact.
Timing alters the entire economic landscape of the region. If you book an event on Vancouver Island in July, you are competing with global tourism. The cost of a hotel block for your guests doubles.
Makes sense. Supply and demand.
Exactly. The cost of renting passenger vans to shuttle people from the ferry terminal skyrockets. Furthermore, ferry reservations sell out months in advance.
Right.
If your vendors do not secure commercial ferry reservations 6 months prior, they might miss the sailing entirely, and your food simply does not arrive.
The logistics are incredibly fragile. It requires a massive amount of foresight. The Weddizer platform is forcing you to look at the holistic economic picture. You are not just paying for access to a beautiful patch of trees, you are financing a complex logistical operation to move humans, infrastructure, and resources into and out of a wild ecosystem.
That is the reality of the Destination Forest event.
So, synthesizing everything we have unpacked today from this massive mountain of research, what is the ultimate actionable takeaway for someone staring down this venue selection decision?
When you distill the data, the path forward is clear. If your priority is cinematic scale, if you want massive, imposing mountains, roaring rivers, and dramatic topography, and you need to accommodate a larger guest list with relative ease, Washington is the strategic choice.
Right.
It provides wild, volatile adventure while keeping you tethered to major global infrastructure and a vast vendor pool.
But if your vision is uncompromisingly exclusive, if you demand that ethereal combination of ancient forest meeting the crashing ocean, and you prioritize a drier, more predictable summer climate, Vancouver Island is the answer.
Yes.
Provided, of course, that you're willing to embrace the grueling logistics, accept a smaller guest list, and fund the heavy transportation multipliers.
And this underscores the vital importance of utilizing a resource like the Weddizer website's articles section. They strip away the romantic illusion.
They really do.
They do not just show you a perfectly edited photo of a misty forest. They expose the mechanical, brutal reality of what it takes to execute that photo. They explain the ferry schedules, the physics of the light, the necessity of local knowledge, and the bureaucratic maze of permit fees. They give you the data required to make an informed, resilient decision.
Because the fantasy of the forest is beautiful, but mastering the logistics is what prevents that fantasy from turning into a disaster. As we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Something that really stuck with me as we explored these wild landscapes. At the very beginning, we talked about how picking a traditional indoor venue is an exercise in purchasing total control.
Right, the sterile box.
You buy the exact temperature, the exact lighting, the exact acoustic environment. It is safe and it is predictable. But when you make the choice to step into a Pacific Northwest forest, whether you are navigating the unpredictable alpine mist of Washington or the complex coastal logistics of Vancouver Island, you are fundamentally doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You're actively, deliberately surrendering control to nature. So here is the question to mull over. Is it possible that the surrender itself is the point?
Oh, that's interesting.
Is it possible that giving up that rigid control, choosing to embrace the sudden moody fog, leaning into the dim, mysterious lighting of an ancient canopy, and accepting the wild, uneven moss beneath your feet, is exactly what strips away the sterile predictability of a standard gathering?
I think so.
Maybe the magic isn't found in forcing the environment to bend to your itinerary. Maybe the true magic, the thing that transforms a gathering into a once-in-a-lifetime experience, is letting the wildness of the environment dictate the memory. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive logistical journey today as we unpack the incredible venue selection guidance from the Weddizer platform's articles. Keep analyzing the logistics, keep exploring those wild spaces, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
The guide warns against booking during peak tourist seasons or heavy rain months without understanding the financial impact.
Timing alters the entire economic landscape of the region. If you book an event on Vancouver Island in July, you are competing with global tourism. The cost of a hotel block for your guests doubles.
Makes sense. Supply and demand.
Exactly. The cost of renting passenger vans to shuttle people from the ferry terminal skyrockets. Furthermore, ferry reservations sell out months in advance.
Right.
If your vendors do not secure commercial ferry reservations 6 months prior, they might miss the sailing entirely, and your food simply does not arrive.
The logistics are incredibly fragile. It requires a massive amount of foresight. The Weddizer platform is forcing you to look at the holistic economic picture. You are not just paying for access to a beautiful patch of trees, you are financing a complex logistical operation to move humans, infrastructure, and resources into and out of a wild ecosystem.
That is the reality of the Destination Forest event.
So, synthesizing everything we have unpacked today from this massive mountain of research, what is the ultimate actionable takeaway for someone staring down this venue selection decision?
When you distill the data, the path forward is clear. If your priority is cinematic scale, if you want massive, imposing mountains, roaring rivers, and dramatic topography, and you need to accommodate a larger guest list with relative ease, Washington is the strategic choice.
Right.
It provides wild, volatile adventure while keeping you tethered to major global infrastructure and a vast vendor pool.
But if your vision is uncompromisingly exclusive, if you demand that ethereal combination of ancient forest meeting the crashing ocean, and you prioritize a drier, more predictable summer climate, Vancouver Island is the answer.
Yes.
Provided, of course, that you're willing to embrace the grueling logistics, accept a smaller guest list, and fund the heavy transportation multipliers.
And this underscores the vital importance of utilizing a resource like the Weddizer website's articles section. They strip away the romantic illusion.
They really do.
They do not just show you a perfectly edited photo of a misty forest. They expose the mechanical, brutal reality of what it takes to execute that photo. They explain the ferry schedules, the physics of the light, the necessity of local knowledge, and the bureaucratic maze of permit fees. They give you the data required to make an informed, resilient decision.
Because the fantasy of the forest is beautiful, but mastering the logistics is what prevents that fantasy from turning into a disaster. As we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Something that really stuck with me as we explored these wild landscapes. At the very beginning, we talked about how picking a traditional indoor venue is an exercise in purchasing total control.
Right, the sterile box.
You buy the exact temperature, the exact lighting, the exact acoustic environment. It is safe and it is predictable. But when you make the choice to step into a Pacific Northwest forest, Whether you are navigating the unpredictable alpine mist of Washington or the complex coastal logistics of Vancouver Island, you are fundamentally doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You're actively, deliberately surrendering control to nature. So here is the question to mull over. Is it possible that the surrender itself is the point?
Oh, that's interesting.
Is it possible that giving up that rigid control, choosing to embrace the sudden moody fog, leaning into the dim, mysterious lighting of an ancient canopy, and accepting the wild, uneven moss beneath your feet, is exactly what strips away the sterile predictability of a standard gathering?
I think so.
Maybe the magic isn't found in forcing the environment to bend to your itinerary. Maybe the true magic, the thing that transforms a gathering into a once-in-a-lifetime experience, is letting the wildness of the environment dictate the memory. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive logistical journey today as we unpack the incredible venue selection guidance from the Weddizer platform's articles. Keep analyzing the logistics, keep exploring those wild spaces, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.